and welcome to Graveside Chat. This is the very first episode of Graveside Chat, which is kind of a glimpse inside the inner sanctum of Arcane, the production studio behind the Frightmare Theater podcast. All right, let's keep moving though, because we're
Yeah, we're
getting
running.
along here. We're getting a little long in the tooth. I want to get through these, but yes, good, well played, Alex. That's a good one.
Hmm.
That definitely, and it's a fun one that you can definitely watch again and again because it's got a lot of action in it, and it's got some just solid Freddy Krueger one-liners as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, Andy's up.
Okay, the next one is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And what?
No, it's good. It's not on my list so far. Nothing has been duplicated.
Oh, okay, I thought you
And
were gasping because, like, oh, how
no,
original.
Texas Chainsaw
But
Massacre. No,
but I
nothing
again
had
I
come out like that before that came out.
yeah, and like I was saying about a lot of the movies that succeed have really good acting. This one has a lot of amateur actors, and a lot of it is you
But
can
they're
tell
just
it's
being
like
terrified the whole time, and
right,
they were really being terrified, so it
right,
works.
and it
Oh no.
doesn't fit that criteria. But as far as a sustained dread and the whole scene again, which goes without saying, where she is, it's just a huge chase scene.
Yeah.
Was one of the most heart pounding things that I had seen, and maybe I saw it at an age that um, was at the right time. But from what I've heard and read of other people, is that yeah, that was very something that is still in people's minds then now.
Well, in
But
that dinner table scene, that was
yeah,
really disturbing. I mean, the
yeah,
grandfather, and they
and
put the hammer in his hand, and he can't do it. Ugh.
and again, this could be seen as, is this a thriller because it's set in somewhat reality, but
No, it's
they're
too much.
cannibals. And then again with the old man, you're not sure if he's dead or alive.
Is it a mask
And
or is it his face?
right, you're not sure, so it
Is it just
leaves a
bad
lot
makeup?
of questions about what it really feels. If there were a movie that I would say seems to replicate a nightmare, then Nightmare or Texas
Backwoods
Chainsaw
Nightmare.
Massacre
Yeah.
would probably be it. And again, like you said, it was at the right time.
Hmm.
This was when a lot of um, the directors that, like Alfred Hitchcock, and this is something that's referenced all the time. But this was something where new directors, young directors, were coming up and shaking the whole status quo as to
Right.
what you can get away with. And this
Right.
movie is something that
It
was
broke all the
criticized,
rules. Yeah.
and it seems very gritty. It's independent. It came out of nowhere. It
Professed to be real, like based on
professed
a
to be.
true
It
story.
was almost kind of like a Blair Witch type of thing. Is that this is based on a true story. Um, but um,
Yeah.
I think that, and it was piggybacking off of the 1960s, because people were able to tune into real horrors on television by seeing footage from Vietnam War. So
Right.
this was kind of inspired by it, and also playing into that whole um,
And
new
it was
idea
inspired by Ed
of what.
Gein, just like Psycho was too.
Yeah, and so it was trying to be a little bit more grisly, and
Right.
each horror movie is going to try and top the other ones. Like, well, that you think that's really bloody and that's disgusting, well, then see this. I think that this has a good balance as to,
Yeah.
because you really don't see that much. I
Right.
mean,
It's pretty tame compared to today's standards.
yeah, but
Oh
again,
yeah.
the scene where that's really scary is where the guy is running into the house, and uh, Leatherface comes out from behind a corner and just hits him with a mallet, and the sound that it
Ugh.
makes, and then he falls to the ground and he just
And just
starts
Oh.
twitching.
convulsing.
And he
I
just
mean,
drags him in there and slams
Yeah.
the door
right.
shut.
And I
Ugh.
think that what part of it is that it leads up to the movie being kind of goofy, because they pick up the hitchhiker, and it's
Hmm.
like,
Oh,
this,
right.
what is this? I mean,
Yeah.
um, this is just kind of a cheap exploitation movie. But then when that happens, that's when the big turnaround
Right, because you think
occurs.
he's a hero.
And
You think, oh, this is the hero.
right,
This is going to
and
be.
so I think that, and again, just the whole scene where she jumps out the window, it just seems very real, and
Right.
I think that she did a really good job of acting. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of people cite Shelley Duvall in The Shining as like, she has to be crying and have that scared face on all the time. Well, I think that this actress did the same thing just as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
and
No,
it also ends
solid pick.
very bleakly and open, and you don't know what happens to the family. Uh, you're
And
just
it's a
glad
lot
that
of
the
it is
whole
at
thing is
daytime.
over.
It's not all like
Yeah,
shot at night
yeah,
with shadows. It's kind of like this could happen anywhere and they're so far away nobody would hear you. Like
yeah.
where are you going to run to get away from these people?
Oh, and
It's
another thing,
uh
it's a nightmare, is where she goes into the convenience store. After she's been running through the woods, and she's just left there alone, and the door is open
mhm.
into the nighttime, and she's just waiting there, and you're just thinking that Leatherface is going to come in at any time, but he never does, and
Yeah.
the guy comes in, and you think that, anyways. There's just a lot of good moments that I think people forget about it, and
Right.
um, I think that it's actually a pretty well made movie.
Yeah. I mean, it put him on the map, Toby Hooper. I mean, he got tons of work after that. Before that he was a no name filmmaker, and that movie was so innovative and so amazing. It put him on the map and gave him a career. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Well played. Well played. Good pick. Um, is it is it Heath now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This next one is a very like more just my pick. I'm also I'll be honest, I didn't think Misery was going to be the one that we argued wasn't a horror. I thought it was going to be this one. Um, but it is a film that for some reason really stood out to me and really connects, has really been impactful on my mind as far as being a writer and being thinking about horrific, and that is a film called Event Horizon.
Oh yes,
Anybody?
Oh, jeez.
yes.
Alex is like
Anybody?
preach.
Okay.
I
Preach.
haven't seen that one.
You've
Yeah,
never
I
seen
know
Event
about it.
Horizon?
Mm-mm.
Sam
Yes, Heath.
Sam Neill,
Yes.
it's a great movie.
Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, and it's a sci-fi film
Mhm.
for all intents and purposes, but
But it's
it
definitely horror.
veers
It is a
off in this
cult.
Yeah.
It is a
very.
cult.
It's a horror, right?
It is
Okay,
it is
and
absolutely
it
horror.
just
Yeah, the premise of it
some of
is
the
horror. Yeah.
Is there
the
something where,
premise of
are
it.
you going to spoil it for me if I don't know?
Yeah,
Is it?
you shouldn't the
I'm
basic
sorry.
premise of it
I'm
is
not
that a
going to
ship.
talk that in
Maybe I
depth
should go to
about it.
the
Yeah.
bathroom while you discuss
No,
it.
it's don't you don't need to
No. I'm.
the basic thing if you read the back of the box, it's that a ship that is supposed to be able to do like what faster than some travel like light speed or whatever.
It's
It's experimenting with
creating a
a
tesseract, a
wormhole.
wormhole,
Yeah, a wormhole to
Yeah.
move. It
folding
disappears.
space and
It
moving
yeah,
from one
and
place to another.
it disappears and it's been gone for a number of years and then
Yep.
it appears out of is it Neptune? It's like on the around one of the moons of
Oh
Neptune or
gosh,
something. It's somewhere
I
out
believe
and
something
it's the
like
ship
that.
is called
Yeah.
Yeah.
the Event Horizon and it just appears and
Hmm.
they found its beacon but there's nobody they can't get anybody so they send a crew and the person who
A rescue
created that
crew to
that
go in.
drive that special folding space drive
Hmm.
to go out and see what happened and
Hmm.
it's questionable about where this thing has actually been and what it means to fold space and time
Yeah.
and should mankind do some things like
Hmm,
this and
okay.
so it's
And
part haunted house movie it's part occult
hmm
terrifying weird sadomasochistic shit it's part body horror and it's part slasher it
body
really
horror
devolves
plus
as it goes on I
Hellraiser
think the
plus
ending of the
haunted
movie
house
yeah it's a little
plus
hellraiser
yeah
it's a little bit country and a little bit rock and
yeah
roll all in one. But the end of it,
yeah
I think it as it goes on, it
on a
kind of
spaceship.
devolves. Yeah, it devolves to me into being a typical '90s slasher movie towards the end, where it's like Ten Little Indian kind of storyline, where it's like who's gonna die and then and I think the premise is great. I think the first act of
I
the
will
movie is
agree with that.
epic, and then as it goes on, it kind of fizzles out. It's never bad, but it's just not as solid as it is at the beginning of the movie. And I love that movie too.
I will say it does not completely stick the ending. And
Yeah,
again, we're not getting into spoiler territory at all
right.
for
Yeah.
you, Andy. It was something that made me, first of all, just truly horrific. But and in some of the things like I said, my novel that I wrote, like I feel like there is some inspiration that came from some of the imagery from the movie.
Hmm.
and like thinking, oh my God, you could go to that point with this. And I
Right.
know, so many like the sort of torture porn and borderline snuff film type
I
things
don't think that that
can
is that
maybe
though.
even go further,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
don't
but
think it
it's
is
not. It
that.
just
I
it
think
was
it only gives you hints of that stuff. It doesn't really
it gives you
push the
hints of
envelope.
it,
Right.
but enough of it, but not just it's not subliminal. It's very bliminal. It's just
Right.
it's the blip of bliminal
Yeah.
there.
I mean,
And
people are trying to
seeing
find that
some of
lost
the
footage,
imagery that
Heath.
they created
Still.
was, oh God.
They're still trying to
What
find
what
that
what
lost
now?
footage. That lost footage of all that stuff that they shot for that intercut sequence where, they get all of what on the camera what
Oh
happened.
yeah.
They shot all that, but
Hmm.
they don't have it. Like nobody knows where that footage is. It's destroyed. And so people have been trying to find it. All they have
I'm
are
going to
little
look in.
snippets of it. There's this
That's
whole
crazy.
movement to try to get it, and they're getting ready to come out with a brand
Wow.
new special edition Blu-ray, and everybody was hoping that that footage would be on there as a special feature, but it's lost. And
No,
Hmm.
everybody's been trying to find it for years.
that's so
Um,
intriguing.
yeah, sorry,
The
sorry.
other main reason that I picked Event Horizon in general was it was that thing in my formative years, like growing up in high school and college, where it kind of opened this door in my brain that said, "Oh, sci-fi, horror, peanut butter and
Hmm.
jelly. Like, why not put them together?" And that it can be done that way. I
There
know
you go.
Alien, we've already spoken to that, Alien is a sci-fi film, but it's a horror as well. This
Yeah,
one very
yeah.
much Event Horizon was that the key that unlocked the door of that the idea of that hybrid sort of genre for me. So
Yeah,
it's always been
I think Event
kind of up
Horizon is
there in my
even more
list.
of a horror than Alien is, in all honesty, because of the occult aspects of it. I think that
Sure.
it definitely has a place, and the main premise of it is a perfect blend of scientific theory, science fiction theory,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
science and religion kind of have a disgusting little baby in space. That's what that is. I think. And
It's
so
there's a
Heath is
lot of
very much
ideas like
there.
just
Yes.
against each other in that movie, and
Just
that's always been
with
from
chains
the
and
first time I saw it. I again, it's not a movie that I think I could sit down and watch, every day, but
Yeah.
at the
we're
same time,
we're
like, it's
gonna
about
watch
time.
that on
It's
our
been about a
next
year since
writers
I've seen
retreat,
it. I'll
right?
probably need to watch it.
That's
Hell
going
yeah,
on.
I'm
That's
in.
going
I'm
on our
so
next
in for
writers
Event
this
Yes.
Horizon.
summer. This summer
Oh,
that's gonna happen.
I love
So,
it.
okay, moving on.
Love it.
Heath, great pick. My next pick is I picked my favorite horror remake because there's so many horror remakes, and I wanted to pick one that I think exemplifies what a remake can do, and that is the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. It was remade from by the director Zack Snyder, but
Yep.
the writer James Gunn. And
Yeah,
I
Hmm.
think I think
yeah.
it not only paid tribute to what came before with the original Dawn of the Dead, and saying, but it took it to the new level of what scares us. It made the zombies fast moving. It did it
Hmm.
in a very unique way. The makeup, all the practical effects are outstanding, and it still was great social commentary, but social commentary in a post 9/11 world. um, and I think zombies were just starting to come back in. This is all before Walking Dead and all
Yep.
that bullshit. So
Hmm.
this movie to me, the only thing that had come out even close to what this movie did was 28 Days Later, where you had fast moving infected people.
Hmm.
They weren't zombies. If you're a purist, they're not zombies. They're not dead in that movie. But in this movie, they are dead. And the acting in it is, I think, fantastic. I think the writing is pretty damn good in it. Sarah Polly and what's Ving Rhames, and
Hmm.
you've got Jake Weber. I love Jake
Oh,
Weber,
so
and
many people.
yeah,
What's his
Ty,
face from
Mackay Pfeiffer,
Ty
Modern
Burrell.
Family?
Ty
Ty
Burrell.
Burrell.
Yep, yep.
Ty Burrell. Thank you.
Ty Burrell. Yeah, and all sorts of people in it, and uh, it's done really well. It's got a lot of cameos too from people who had come before in the horror icons. So they really pay tribute for horror lovers. And I think it has one of the strongest horror movie, but strongest opening title sequences the one of the tightest first 10 minutes of a movie I've ever seen. That opening sequence where all the shit happens, and then it has just that killer um, uh, when the man comes around soundtrack to from Johnny
Oh
Cash
yeah.
while it's going through its opening credits. It is scary. The opening credits are scary, and it never lets up.
Yeah.
That movie has a
Yeah.
general feeling of dread and tension from the beginning, and it just really got me. And I thought, wow, this movie didn't try. It paid homage to what came before, but it didn't try to recreate it. It really found its own thing, and using what happened before and that general plot, it really did something new with the genre. And I think it paved the way for a lot of other crappier things to try to mimic it. But it stands alone as a very solid movie that I watch again and again and again.
I think Nathan, I'm so glad you picked that because I really like that movie a lot, and I think exactly what you just said. It gets lumped in with all of these Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, Nightmare on Elm Street remake, like that. When people are talking about this, the sort of and no offense meant if anyone enjoys these, but like kind of the Bloomhouse garbage that exists,
Hmm.
and it, but it wasn't. It was so good on its own while still being uh, uh, referential and reverent to the original
Hmm.
and creating something wholly new in the process.
Right. It
I,
recognized that we live
I,
in a different
I
time. Yeah. And it didn't try to
yeah,
replicate
absolutely.
what the original movie is, such a great satire of that time and what Romero was trying to say about consumerism and all sorts of things in that particular era. But this is a whole other bag, and it really
What was the metaphor for the remake, do you think? It's been a long time since I've seen it. Probably I think
well,
when it came out.
the fear of it was kind of the resurgence of the zombie movement. So there's the fear of the other, the fear of um, mankind eating itself in the face of a crisis and not being reliable on itself, um, and also the fear of infection. That was a real big scare with because we started having people being constantly worried about biological weapons at that time. Everybody was concerned about getting mailed anthrax and all sorts of other stuff that we were seeing. Oh, it could be you had biological weapons being, or like other kinds of, weapons being released or talked about all the time. And that movie, it's widely argued what zombies um, stand for as a metaphor in society in general, because basically they're us, but they're an automaton version of us, right? And zombies have been prevalent in our pop culture since the 30s, really, or before, with I walked with a zombie and things like the white zombie, things like that, but they meant something different. And then you have Romero coming in and changing the face of what zombies are, and there's it rep it resonates differently with society based on what's going on. And zombies come in and out. They get goofy. In the 80s, they got real goofy with the Return of the Living Dead movies, where they were almost poking fun at the Romero movies and making it, send more paramedics and brains and all that stuff. And it's fun. It's good, fun, campy fun.
Yeah.
But it's like what happened with the Universal monsters. They were made very serious, and then they became campy in the 40s and 50s, and then they came back with the Hammer films as being more serious, and then they got campy again in the 70s. And the same thing with zombies. We see that again and again and again. And zombies were out. Like zombies were out. Nobody was doing zombie stuff, and if they did, it was bomb. It would bomb majorly, like House of the Dead and shit like that.
Hmm.
That would come out, and then you had this. You had 28 Days Later that came out that was lumped in with the zombie genre. It really wasn't, but it's lumped in that way because it has that same feel, that the epidemic of the whole world in upheaval because of this virus that gets released and these infected people. And then this was almost right on its heels. That took that idea of the fast moving and zombies and made them really scary. They're animalistic, and it's almost like they're acting on instinct. They're not these very slow moving like you there's just so many you can't get away. It's if you're out there, they will run at you and you can't get away from them. It's impossible because they're so in that opening scene too. You even have he's the main woman, Sarah Polly. She's being chased by her husband, and as he's running after her, he sees an easier prey and he bolts off after
Hmm.
that. and you're like, oh shit, it changed the rules, and it gives you the rules right off the bat in the movie if you're paying attention. It shows you how a zombie is made, how fast they can turn, what happens, like how fast they move, everything, and that's a good
That
script.
opening sequence, man. The
Oh
opening
God, it's
sequence is
so
just
scary. And the fact that one minute that's somebody that you love and that you trust, and the next minute they're a snarling uh husk of what they were that will kill you, and they don't recognize you, and you but they still look like them, and it's not them, and that's I think it's pretty horrific in general. But you can talk about I we can have a whole podcast talking about what zombies mean, honestly, because there's so much
yeah.
zombie stuff in our culture today, and The Walking Dead too, which I think is long run its course, but it's still going. So we're not going to
Stay
get into
tuned
that.
for episode 2 of Graveside.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, that's my next pick because I wanted to pick what I consider to be one of the best horror remakes of all time. Um, is that so?
Okay.
Okay, we're back at Alex.
Okay, so it's interesting this being one of my favorites because the makers of it weren't a fan of the product, but I love this movie. Not the remake of it, but the original, but The Fog.
I love the original Fog.
Yeah.
The remake isn't a
I
treat.
watched that again. Even, I mean, Nathan, you and I went and saw that in the theater. I watched it again maybe a couple of weeks ago. I was doing something, just put it on in the background and
Gotta
liked
love
it
Hal
even
Holbrook.
just as a background
Yeah.
movie.
The soundtrack
Yes,
alone
yes.
is gold.
The soundtrack, yes.
Oh, I have that downstairs too. Double disc vinyl set, baby. Oh yeah. The Fog. I love that. And the effects in it are creepy. And I love that you can't see them the whole time.
Yeah.
Like you never really see them fully. It's not like the light is just shined on them. There's always this element of, oh my God, what do they look like behind there? You see their eyes, you see their rotting hands, you see like almost you see a face,
Yeah.
a silhouette, but you never quite fully see them. And I love that. It's so much scarier because we're sitting there going, ooh, it's like in Beetlejuice where they're like, "Are you Night of the Living Dead under there?" Like what's under the
The sheet.
the sheet? Yeah, I love that movie. I think it's great. It's genuinely creepy. It's a very classic creepy feel. Um,
Yeah, I mean, talking about Creep Show and Tales from the Crypts, it has that
yes,
mood to it,
yes,
and
it
uh,
definitely does.
and I like the setting of the little harbor town
Mm-hmm.
Right,
and the
it's almost
lighthouse.
Yeah.
Lovecraftian in that way,
And
like a forgotten seaport.
some of my favorite parts are when uh, the what's her name, Stevie Wayne,
Yeah.
Adrian
Yes.
Barbeau, is talking to the weatherman at night, and she says, "Well, what's the weather report?" And he says, "Well, there's a fog bank coming up."
Yes.
Oh, really? Well, my reports say that a fog doesn't go against the wind. And then you cut to that ship, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
fog, the green fog, rolls over the ship. And what else was there? There was something about when the weatherman gets killed and he opens the door, and there's a lot of great sound effects, but
Yeah.
he opens it, and it's like he's opening a freezer
Yeah.
because it has
Yeah.
this very subtle frozen tone to it.
Right. When you see the
And
fog almost react in that way, it's like a suction. It's like, you
yeah,
know, yeah.
but I think that the sound effects are one of the best things in it. And
Yes.
when the piece of wood has the demonic voice come through the
Mhm.
the radio,
Oh
um,
yes.
it it
So many good. I want to go back and watch the
yeah,
fog again.
and I think also since it takes place in like 2 nights, really,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
I like movies that are in real time.
Yeah. That don't keep.
It seems like. So yeah, that's a good one.
It is. It is absolutely fantastic pick, Alex. Well played, sir. God, I still can't believe we don't have any doubles yet. We're gonna get them. I know we are.
Yeah.
I know we are. All right, Andy, you're up
Oh,
next.
we're gonna get one right now, I'm sure. But my second favorite, and I keep going back and forth between the two, is Night of the Living Dead.
Ah, we got one. That's my number one. So I'm not gonna.
Okay.
We'll just talk about it now. I'm not gonna say it. But and I didn't put mine in order, so that's okay. But
Yeah.
you go ahead and start talking about it, and I'll jump in. But yes, Night of the Living Dead, absolutely.
Well, I guess kind of culturally, it had an impact, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
A lot of people were shocked by it, and it wouldn't be one that you would typically think would be, because it again was low budget. It's black and white.
Mhm.
It begins kind of campily. It's kind of campy in its
It
setup.
it has that
It's
Judith
with,
O'Dea's acting is a
yeah,
little
it's with the
broad.
same actors. They're very amateur, and that doesn't mean that they're bad in it,
No,
because
no.
I think that she gets a lot of a bad rap. It seems
No,
like
it's just a
her
little
acting,
broad, but it's a
and
style too.
yeah, and I think that that's what misleads you into thinking it's going to be something like a William Castle movie or something
Yeah.
like that. But then and again, this is another movie that takes place in one night, and this
Mhm.
is just
Yeah.
a snippet. This is just a little tiny. This is in a farmhouse, and this is happening all over the United States, and it's spreading. And you
Right.
don't know. You don't have any. Well, they do tune into that newscast, and the
Right.
reporter's telling you, and you get filled in on what exactly is happening, but
Mhm.
still you're left in the dark. You're
I
still
love
not
that.
sure what
It's not an
caused it,
we don't have an omnipresent view in that. We really
and it
are stuck with what they know
yeah,
and
and
what
it
they
does
can find out.
right.
Yeah.
So you're in the same boat with them. You feel like
Yeah.
you're stuck in that
Isolated.
farmhouse,
Yeah.
and again, just it plays on a very basic nightmare premise of being chased, the chase dream. You're slowly being enclosed, claustrophobic. Um, you're the people that are strangers have to come together, and the
And they
arguments between
yeah.
all of them, and
Everybody has a different idea of how to save the day or how to survive
yeah.
if they would just cooperate. But
And the funny thing is that, and what's infuriating is that the guy that you think is wrong the entire time, that wants to go into the basement, is the one that, if they had done that, actually they probably would have been fine, because the one survivor that goes down there does that same thing, and he blocks the door, and
yeah.
it's strong enough to hold them.
But but at the time, that's the beauty of hindsight because at the time they didn't know that it would blow over. It was just getting worse and worse and worse. The
Hmm.
only reason that they survive is because the hillbillies come through and start picking off the zombies. But if they
Yeah,
didn't, then
maybe.
they
Yeah,
would run out of food down there or they would
yeah,
run out of
that's true.
water down there, and all hell you die very quickly
But
without those things.
and the last thing I'll say, and then you can talk, Nathan, because I know that you're a bigger aficionado on the movie than I am. But I watched this probably about the age that I think is a good age for kids to make that transition.
What was
About
that?
10,
Okay,
about
10.
10 years old, I think, maybe a
Okay.
little younger. It
Yeah.
was the first movie that I'd actually bought with my own money. I'd seen it in the
Really?
video store, and I bought it. And I think that I'd seen some parody commercial of it, and it had been something that was already embedded in the culture, that I knew what it was, but I'd never seen anything that the actual genesis of all these jokes and parodies. So I thought that's what made me want to watch it.
Hmm.
Um, so I watched it alone late at night, and I really was afraid uh, by it. And that was the first black and white movie that had done that, because I'd seen some and they were just kind of,
Yeah.
dated. But I was shocked when you actually see the intestines and the organs being just thrown around by these
The
zombies.
hand being stripped.
Yeah, and um, I think again the whole nightmare of it happening in one night, it just felt very real.
Yeah.
And again, it ended very bleakly.
Yeah. I think that movie is incredibly bleak. And I saw it when I was 8. And I saw it alone too. But my dad had always told me that it's one of the scariest movies and it's one of his favorite horror movies. But I can't watch it. I couldn't watch it yet. And I was home late. I was homesick from school. My brother had gone to school. My mom was also sick. So she was in bed. And I said, I knew she was sick. And I went into her room and I go, Hey, mom, can I watch Night of the Living Dead? And she was like, Yeah, sure. Go ahead. And I was like, yes. So if dad asks, I could say, Mom told me I could. So I went in the room and I watched it. And we had to go pick my brother up from school. And I remember being sick on the couch, eating like chicken noodle soup I'd warmed up and a Coke, you know, Coca Cola. And I was sitting there, and the trowel scene where the little girl stabs her mom with the trowel, I
Mhm.
knocked my Coke over. And because I jumped, I was like, I was so into it. There was nobody there with me. I was just in an afternoon just watching it. And how real to me it seemed, because the settings aren't anything gothic. It's like a farmhouse, and I grew up in Springfield. I was living in Texas at this point, but I grew up in Springfield. I'd seen farmhouses, I'd seen places like this. I'd gone out to the country, um, outside, and visited my grandparents' stuff. And I was like, geez, this just seems so real to me. The people seemed real to me. Yeah, it was black and white, but it was that thing of, what am I not seeing? Like, what's in the darkness, because you'd see blackness, and then you'd see a pale figure slouching towards them. It's like, uh and they're not seeing it, and you're like, like, and they can't see it. And I got so scared, I knocked over my Coke, and my mom was like, okay, that's it. So I didn't even finish the fucking movie. I didn't even finish it. But the trial scene, I had nightmares, recurring nightmares for 3 months straight
Damn.
of zombies killing my family. Horrifying. And my parents almost took me to therapy. They didn't. I wish that they. I mean, like, I'm seriously 3 months solid of nightmares. Like, they didn't take me to therapy, but it was a different time. And but I couldn't watch that movie. Guys, I could not watch that movie for a long time. I didn't watch that movie again until either I was a senior in high school or early college with my dad again. And I remember I watched it in his room, and he had to watch it with me, and it was daytime. Because it still got me to where I was so scared that I was going to have nightmares again. It became more of a fear of, oh my God, if I watch this movie, I'm going to have nightmares again. Not that the movie necessarily was so scary, but that it would draw up all those horrible things that I used to be so scared of. But it didn't, and I wound up loving, I loved it so much, and it had such a deep effect on my psyche that it did affect me. The style of it, the sounds of it, it's beautifully, the sounds are so terrifying. The music is so terrifying.
Yeah,
So
the music is really good, and
fantastic.
but the strange thing is I later found out that some of those cues are the same ones that are used in Plan 9 from Outer Space.
I did not know that.
And
Really?
it's just a generic music cue that I think that was in some kind of music library that
Wow.
they must have plugged in.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting. I didn't know
it
that.
works really well in the movie, and that's something that I remember too.
Well, and I have such a respect for that movie, and I think as far as classic films go, I almost had Dracula on there because that's the very first movie that affected me when I was a kid, 1931, the Dracula, Todd Browning's film. Um, but I wound up going with this because it wound up being so much more profound for me, throughout my life. Not just get my love for horror, because I had that love for horror before I saw this, but the effect that a concept can have over someone if done correctly. If Because that movie is not expensive. It
Hmm.
was not, the only thing they had was a passion to make something, and it was so effective that I thought, I can do this.
Yeah,
I can make this. This
I
is something we
understand
can
that.
all do. We can all make something with an idea and with loving it so much that you pour everything you have into it. And it doesn't matter how much money goes into it if it's a pure concept, if it's got that amount of energy put into it. And that movie showed that to me. It
Yeah.
didn't need a big studio to be
Speaking
that
of
effective.
that, that's kind of what made me get into doing little videos when I was younger. And I made a short Night of the Living Dead type of
Did you really? Do you still have it?
movie. It's somewhere, but
Let me see.
that must have been something where I realized that this is something I must have done some research on it, or I could tell that it was low budget, and it seemed like this seems like fun because I was finally able to put, okay, these are actors, and
Right,
how did they get those intestines? And oh, they're animal intestines and things like
right.
that. Well, where would they get that? And how did they light this thing? And so I think that's a movie that kind of put in my idea, oh, this is something that you can put together with some friends in an evening.
So iconic. I almost have that movie frame by frame memorized, because I love it so much, and I've seen it so many times. But yeah, definitely fucking twisted me up for many, many years. So, okay, well, we jumped ahead. Andy, that's a great pick.
Well, again, I'm ready for another argument on this one probably too. Uh, but it is February 24th, and it's Twin Peaks Day. That's the day that Agent Cooper arrives in Twin Peaks,
Oh,
and that chewing gum like is coming back into style because my number two is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
let's
This is
rock.
my sneaky way to get a TV show into our movie conversation. But
Okay. It's
it
not a
is a
TV
film.
show.
It was
That's a
made to be a
movie.
film.
That is a movie.
It's not. It's a movie. I kind of waffled on this one because I
Yeah.
wanted some sort of Lynchian something in here, and
Yeah, yeah.
I waffled on maybe putting Eraserhead here instead.
That's horrific too.
Um,
Yeah.
it's quite horrific. I almost would say that Eraserhead might be an honorable mention for me, but Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, that film itself, and by extension of the TV show that does go along with it,
Yeah.
but that movie in particular, following along the journey that Laura Palmer has, already knowing what will happen from watching the show. I don't know of any experience watching a film that I've had more of just this like heavy dread and worry and unease that I guess is sort of in my mind kind of synonymous with the term Lynchian.
Yeah.
Um, but um,
Heath,
but
I gotta
it
agree with you, buddy. I think it's a horror movie, and I think a lot of people might not think of Lynch as a horror director, you know, but that is very much a horror film. You and me both, we're massive Twin Peaks fans. I don't know about you guys. I don't know Andy or Alex if you're Twin Peaks fans, but Heath and I know are. We had Twin Peaks parties when the new season came out in Springfield, and it has the occult aspects to it too, the supernatural aspects to it, not necessarily occult but
oh
supernatural
sure,
aspects as well. So I think it can definitely, even by Andy's standards, I think that movie can fit into the, because it definitely is a supernatural world, and it's nightmarish, and it
it's
is a,
nightmarish
and you
indeed.
are following, we know from the beginning that the main character is going to die. We know how they die, we know it's very, very
Mm-hmm.
badly, but we don't know exactly all the steps that led up to it, and so we're seeing it happen, and it makes it even more tragic as it's going through.
Even
So
more
it's a
tragic and
tragedy,
even
but it's also a drama, but it's also a horror movie. Yeah.
and it's
Oh.
one of the you can even look at it because it almost has like these acts that it goes through, and
Hmm.
she doesn't really come in until
Um,
it's basically like act
quarter of the
two
way.
of the film, if
Yeah.
you will. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a quarter of the way through. And so there's even like this little half film at the beginning with Agent what's
Chet
Isaac's
Desmond.
name, Chet Desmond, and Kiefer Sutherland, and just following along with them is leading up to this moment of complete. That's the other thing about Twin Peaks in general, just and the the fear of the unknown is something that I think we've kind of brought up a little bit in some of the other entries we've had here, and just being on this journey, not knowing where exactly it's going, but also knowing exactly where it's going, and
Right.
then having that moment where he just disappears, just out of
Yep.
nowhere, and you've no concept of understanding or explanation besides "Let's rock," and then it's back to Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
and it's the
It is. It's
disorienting nature of it,
it. That's the dreamlike
um,
quality that he has. That
is the
it is. It's
yeah like the
disorienting.
dreamlike quality, and then it just spirals down into this horrific nightmare scape
Yeah.
of talking about actresses trying to keep you mentioned Shelley Duvall as well earlier, trying to keep up that rictus
Desperation.
of desperation and pain and fear, and and especially once she has that realization moment of who Bob really is,
Yeah. Oh my God.
it
Oh.
and it's the reality of the situation as opposed to the supernatural element of it that makes it that much more horrifying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I that was my pick. I went with Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me.
I'd need to.
All right. Alex, last one.
Wait, do we get to your number two?
My number two, I switched it up and just did Night of the Living
Okay.
Dead for my number two with Andy, and so they're the
Okay.
same. So that's why I'm jumping over to you, and then I'll just say
Gotcha.
my last one. And just
Nathan's aren't so much numbered as they are
Right.
categorized.
right, mine are just categorized. I can't. I can't just pick like, oh, this is my all-time number one. I can't do it. I'm sorry. It's not in me to do it.
They want Nathan. They want rankings. They want
I know.
rankings.
I know. Everybody does. I just can't do it. I can't commit to that. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, Halloween's my number one.
Oh, yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Nice.
Which is weird because I saw the second one first because I was like when I was little I was just watching TV and I happened upon Halloween 2 was playing like maybe like USA or something and
I'm,
it's
I'm
like
glad you put that aside and actually decided to watch the first one and didn't just go, not for me.
well it was just I mean it was the scene like it was post it was post the like the last nurse getting killed and the scalpel in the back and the lift. It was post that chase scene. So I just clicked on TV's like, oh, and just this music and like and this man just walking down these stairs. And that was my first Halloween image was that. And so then at some point after I watched the first one, but yeah, I actually enjoy Halloween and Halloween 2, but Halloween
Yeah.
2 is a lot more. I
Yeah,
like the
it's a
kills
little
more
bit
in
more.
Halloween
It's a
2, but
well, just because it's more of a slasher movie. Halloween
yeah,
2 became a slasher movie.
yeah,
Halloween 1, they hadn't invented the slasher
yeah,
yet. It was, and I think Halloween 1 rises above the slasher subgenre, in my opinion. It is more of a, it is more than a typical slasher movie, I think, because it's not necessarily about how intricate his kills are.
right,
It's still more about the story, but then the kills because people started
yeah,
latching onto that. So yeah, but I love that first Halloween movie.
yeah,
I love it. It's the same kind of feel that that oh wow, anybody could shoot something like this. This is a neighborhood that anybody lives in. That this horror could be happening right now, and you don't quite know if it's supernatural or not. If you go with what
mm-hmm,
Dr. Loomis says, it's very supernatural. He has the blackest
mm-hmm,
eyes, the devil's
yeah,
eyes. But if you don't go with what Loomis says, he could just be a fucking killer that is really difficult to kill because of his will and determination to destroy. I don't know. But
And
that
body
first movie,
mass.
it's still a question, and then later they just devolve into the thorn, the mark of thorn and all that
yeah.
bullshit. I'm glad they got rid of that. This Halloween I decided to go back and go. You know what? I'm gonna rewatch all the Halloween movies because it's been so long, and I did, and I'm like, ugh,
Oh,
ugh,
That's
ugh.
the only
Well, you made it.
classic like 80s slasher movie. I have not seen all of the sequels. I think I've seen up to the
mm.
fourth
You
movie.
know
well,
what? It's
well,
okay.
technically,
Yeah.
late 70s. I think it was
Right.
78.
It was 78, I
But the
believe. Yeah.
sequels, like that came
Yeah, the
out
Yeah.
sequels
later.
and
Yeah,
and honestly, the first one is gold. The second one is good. It's not gold, but it's
A-
good.
And I
And the
think
third
that
one, Season of the Witch.
You like Season of the Witch, don't you, Andy? Like you
I
like Season.
do. I do.
Andy likes Season of the Witch. I'm not a huge fan of Season of the Witch, but it is kind of fun. But it's not Halloween. It's something else.
yeah,
It's
No. I think that one of the things that
California's
sets
not
Halloween,
Halloween.
the first one, apart from the typical slashers is that the character of Sam Loomis is the one that's tracking him down, and
Yeah.
the whole idea is of that it's not a whodunit like
Right.
Psycho or
yeah,
Friday the 13th, where or all the slashers where it's like, well, which one is the killer? You know that it's this kid that you see in the beginning, and you know that it's an inmate that Sam Loomis is tracking down. And the scene where during the rain, where he's driving to the
that's
asylum, and you
that's
see all the
scary.
patients walking around in their white robes.
And all of a sudden the lightning flashes, then you hear the do do do, do and you're like,
I mean,
what?
that's a good scene that
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know if a lot of people talk
it's very
about, but
scary. My dad and
very
I,
creepy.
that's my dad's favorite scene, I think, in that movie. He whenever my dad's one of those people that when you watch a movie with him, he's like, oh, when things happen, and you're like, as a kid, you're like, what,
Are you
what,
watching? Are you watching? Are you watching?
yeah, ugh, yeah, he does that too. I do that now too. I've become my dad.
I
I
do
think
too.
we all do that. But oh my god, that movie when that scene happened, he's like, oh, and so it makes you go, ooh, because it is scary. That is the
Yeah,
first really. I mean, it's shocking that the kid kills his sister and stuff, but you see that, it's going to happen. But that scene, it's like, what are those people out there? Oh my god, those are insane people. They're just walking around like
mm-hmm,
zombies out in the fucking rain,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he's like, stay in the car. And then, the smashing of the windshield and all of that. And you never see his face really until the end. You never really see his face. And I really love that. And I love the mask and the whole story about the William Shatner mask and all
Yeah.
that. But
William
the
Shatner
fact
mask.
that they
Yeah.
didn't go with like a monster face, but they went with this blank, expressionless face and a white mask, because the horror of Halloween to me is that you don't know why he's doing it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know that he has any emotion whatsoever of what is happening, or any, you don't see his eyes. You don't really know what's going on there. That is what is so horrifying about that movie. And then you have this bullshit remake that Rob Zombie did.
Oh
I'm
God.
sorry, they're awful. And the
They're
reason that they're
awful.
so awful, and I don't think that he's a horrible, horrible filmmaker or anything like that. I like some of his stuff, some of it, not many things, but it's because he tried to give Michael Myers this backstory and this reason, and it's like
Uh-huh.
you've taken away all the horror, and all you're doing now is having us focus on all this bullshit killing the whole time, and it's like you're focusing on the exact opposite reasons that this is a scary movie. Like what you're doing is delegitimizing anything that's scary. What's that
It's that
sound?
noise.
Now it's gone.
Okay.
As soon as we said it, it's gone. I don't know.
Sound like a sickle scraping on pavement.
I thought it
To
was
me,
like
it
a
sounded like
subway
running
car
water.
going by.
It sounded
Okay.
like
It, in my
Maybe that's-
well, my bathroom. I show you my bathroom. It's probably my bathroom.
sounds like running water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I think that he ruined the scares because I think that's what makes that first movie especially just so terrifying. Because you have all these different opinions of why he's doing things, but you never know for sure. Sam Loomis says he's evil, he's pure evil, but we don't know that, and we're kind of hoping he's not. But we're also like, geez, maybe he is. We don't know, and then it's the not knowing that is kind of scary because we're left making it up. It's that Hitchcockian notion of the MacGuffin. It's like we don't quite know what's going on. We don't get it. We don't you know I love it. I love that first movie. I think it's brilliant. I think it's John Carpenter's. Yeah, it's not his best film, but it's a magical film.
The thing, call
So
the thing.
yeah. Well, the thing is also great too. Okay, great job, Alex. Let's move on. Andy.
Me.
It,
Um, well, I don't know. This is another typical one, and people hate hearing it on all these lists because it's always said to be the scariest movie ever made, but it's The Exorcist,
It's
and
my
I
number
think
one
that
too.
okay.
Is it? Okay, so you did have
And
another one. It's not on
good.
my list, but it's only because yes, it is on everybody's list, and I love that movie. It's just
And it goes without saying is that sometimes things that are well known and well cited as being a good movie or book, it's for a reason. And I think that
yes, yes,
this is not only a good horror movie, but it's also one of the best movies ever made. And like any movie in the horror genre, it usually gets lost in the shuffle or underappreciated.
yeah,
But I think that The Exorcist, not only for the 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 moment in time that it was made, the cultural impact, and I don't know if people always talk about Jaws being, the big blockbuster, and
it's a
but I
perfect
think that The
script.
Exorcist is actually something that became more of a phenomenon and was almost forming lines around the street to see it just because of word of mouth.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Being
and
Well,
people, the it was the what do you call it, the element of people being like carried out on stretchers, like the
right, I mean, you would
what's the word I'm looking for here,
the
the
hysteria,
the hysteria, yes,
yes.
yeah,
yeah.
Well, and people were terrified for their souls. It actually had people scared that the devil had something to do with the movie
yeah,
because
and so you would
it
hear
tapped into the religious aspect
you
that
would
no other
hear
movie had done at that point.
urban legends of the film's cursed, or if
Right.
you go see this movie, then you're going to be
And that
damned.
and that
Um,
spiraled it. That spiraled it even more
and
out of
and
control.
and, and again, I mean, I can't. I would have loved to have seen the movie with an audience back then, and in a
Yeah.
way, something that made me appreciate the movie even more, because when I watched it, I actually, going back and saying, well, I was so young that this scared the crap out of me. I think that it's the opposite with this movie. uh, I watched it too young to really appreciate it because it actually is kind of a slow build. And
Mhm.
and again, another movie that has great acting, and it's that you care about the characters. You can't divorce that from the the horror aspect. But I just didn't appreciate it then. But then I watched it. They showed it at the Moxie Cinema here in town, and watching it with an audience, you could, and there were people that had not never seen it before, because I
Mhm.
think that they did a little introduction, and they asked people who had never seen it, and people would raise their hands, and it was it added so much to hearing the audible gasps, and you could
Yeah.
feel the tensed people tensing up in their seats, and um, the the entire last half of that movie, you're just kind of in awe of what you're seeing. And I think that it's not necessarily just because of the shock value. I think that it's also because of just the movie making itself, the editing, the sound effects, the makeup, the acting. It's everything coalesces into
The
one
music and the sounds in that movie.
one just perfect moment. And the sequence at the beginning is something that, again, I thought, what is the point of this? I don't understand. How does this connect to anything? But that's almost one of my favorite segments in the whole movie now, because of the sound effects and the editing. And
The
you're
bees
kind of left in the dark. You're trying to fill in the gaps, but yet still there's that sense of unease as to
Yeah.
where is this going? Who are these people? What is this statue? And the music,
Absolutely.
I mean, everything, it's just one of those, I
Yeah.
think, perfect movies.
There's a reason that it is at on the top 10, top 5, top 3 of everybody's lists. And it's still, I mean, there's people that'll be like, "Oh, it's not scary," but horror is subjective. Some people don't get scared by things that they can't see with their eyes, and people don't believe in the devil. People don't believe in these things anymore. But you got to take it contextually too at the time. It's just like Frankenstein. When you go back and look at the 1930, was it 31 or 32 when Frankenstein came out? I think it's
I think it was
31.
31.
I think it was
I think it was
31.
the same year as
Here's
Dracula.
Dracula. When it came out, too, people had never seen anything like that. They were screaming and leaving the theaters and fainting in their seats and stuff. And nowadays, we're like, "What is so stupid?" And it's the same thing with The Exorcist in a way, but The Exorcist can still hold up because the performances are so strong, because the
Mhm.
cinematography and I mean, you can still put yourself in the shoes of those people. They do everything they can. They're not stupid. They're all intelligent. They're all trying to find any kind of way around this. They go through scientific ways, they go through holistic ways, they do everything they can. And then their last option is to go through mystical and religious ways. And then even then, and it's not just the horror of a girl being possessed by a monster. It's the personal horror that is going on, of a priest who's lost his faith and having to come to terms with that too. There's deep human struggles going on in that movie
Hmm.
that resonate with the audience on so many different levels. And I think that, like you said, it's truly a wonderfully made, remarkable movie. And I
It's so,
think,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I have to give a special mention to the third movie too, The Exorcist 3, because it's a perfect,
Yeah.
I think it's such a good send up of a follow up to that movie. Forget Exorcist 2: The Heretic. That's a nightmare of like not a good nightmare. It's just a shit movie. But The Exorcist 3, which we watched together too, Andy. I didn't we, or did I just tell you to watch it?
Yep. Yep.
Or
We
yeah,
watched it.
okay. So I thought I love that movie, and it made me even appreciate The Exorcist even more somehow. I don't know how, but it did. Um, William Peter Blatty, I think everything that he wanted to say with that story got on the screen,
Mhm.
with what's his name, the director,
William Friedkin.
William Friedkin.
And
William
again,
Friedkin.
I mean, that wouldn't have probably been pulled off as well if he hadn't been directing it, because he did some questionable things during the movie, if you know any of the
Right.
history of it. But
Yes, he did. He
he
did. He was
he
not the happiest.
really went out there to get authenticity and great performances from the actors. And I mean, Ellen Burstyn in it. I mean, a lot of the dialogue, it seems like, is with her, and you're watching
Yes.
her
Right.
just being run through the ringer. And it's I don't know. It's one of, yeah, again, one of my top 5 movies of all time. But what about you, Heath? We haven't heard much from you about it.
Honestly, you've said most of what I need to say. It's the you said the coalescing of the elements, like, and that's, we've been talking about, acting is such an important key thing, but the writing is also there, the direction to combine those things together, along with all of the visual medium that are going along with it. And I think that it's so, like, so many people look at The Exorcist and say, oh, it's not scary but being possessed by the devil, as Nathan was saying, but the horror doesn't really lie in what the girl's going through. It's what her family is going through. It's what
Yeah.
the priest is going through. It's what it, and while it is horrific, the things that are happening to little Regan, the true horror is, your mother sucks dicks in hell. It's that
Yeah.
that sort of bringing around things uh, in a way that you've connected with these characters so strongly because of the good writing, because of the good performances, that
And the lead up,
those
it's
things
got a
that,
slow lead up. It gives you time. It doesn't just
yes,
jump into the creepiness. It gives you time to know them, because then you care what happens to them.
Yeah, and
absolutely,
it again, like that, it earns the right to be that
Yes.
shocking.
Yes, it
absolutely.
definitely does. It doesn't just slap you in the face with it being shocking. It definitely earns that.
But yet it does, like, I feel like it earns the right to slap you in the face, if that
Mhm.
makes
Yes,
sense,
yes,
because I
yes,
feel like that's why it's forever and forever my number one horror film, because of how it affected me.
Yeah.
I like it was like it was a I remember the first time I saw it, it was there was like like I was shaking after I was done. There was a physical element that it impacted me, and if a film can do that, then it's that if it can impact me that much, it must be good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Really quickly, because we need to wrap this up. It's going pretty long here, but
Yeah.
I want to say my last one really quick, just because I haven't said this, and it kind of goes along with this. It's also in that same year, those decades, and this is a movie that, to me, from frame one to the end, is a perfect film. It is one that is so nerve wracking and incites paranoia from the get go. And I think it's a beautiful, wonderful horror film. Also happens to be a science fiction movie. It's the um, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Donald Sutherland
Hmm.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That was this is from 1978.
8. That was
78.
actually, if I had a sixth movie, that
Yeah,
would have been mine.
yeah. It's, to me, it's just it's so terrifying. It's the director of it. I think it's perfect. This is Philip Kaufman's movie, and it evokes, from the opening credit sequence, it's like there's a disturbing nature about it that you can't quite put your finger on. It's like something's not right, but you don't know what it is, and that's what the paranoia is that something around them is happening and nobody sees it because it's so subliminal, it's so small, and yet it's not. It's big, but they can't see it. They don't know until it's too late, and then people that you think you know are not those people anymore. And I know the original that was done in the 50s, that this is a remake too, I guess, and I think probably successful, but a very successful remake. But to me, this one affected me way more than the original. The original is definitely about the McCarthy era and the fear of communism and things like that, I think, very, very much so. This one is different, and I would love to study this film and do more and look into it more, but it's haunting, and it still haunts me. I get really worked up watching it. My anxiety goes through the roof every time I watch it, but it is such a beautifully made movie from the beginning to the end. And the performances, you like all of the characters, they're all interesting. Uh, and I mean, it's got a young Jeff Goldblum in it too, Veronica Cartwright, Leonard Nimoy, um, Brooke Adams, and just, oh, it's artfully done, artfully done.
Hmm.
Well, um, yeah. I think everybody needs to watch that movie. In fact, all the movies on this list were fantastic. Email me your guys' movies again. Like send them over to
Mhm.
me, and I'll make sure that they get in the show notes for this because I can't remember everything. And I want to thank everybody for joining tonight and sharing of yourself. Yeah, Andy.
One thing I
Uh-huh.
wanted to give you my reserves
Okay.
and
Uh,
my most overrated
Okay. We
horror
don't have
movie.
time to talk about them though, but yes, please go.
Damn it. Okay, I just want to list them.
Yes.
Um, Island of Lost Souls
Beautiful.
from the 30s,
Yep.
okay.
The Thing, Jaws, Creep Show, Exorcist 3, Return of the Living Dead, The Witch, Night of the Demon from the 50s, and then the
I
50s
love that
movie.
movie. I
Yeah.
love that movie. Based on a short story called Casting the Runes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
M.R.
think that's what
James.
that's from. Yeah, yeah,
My most overrated horror movies. Nightmare on Elm Street.
yeah. Heath, did he earn that slap in the face?
Oh, oh, it's earned 100%.
um, Hellraiser.
I'll kind of agree with you there.
See,
Kind of
Okay.
I'm
agree
not
with
as
you
much
on
on the
that
but
one.
I
Hellraiser.
love Hellraiser
Mm,
3, Hell on Earth. That's my favorite in there.
There
But
you
Is
go.
that the one in outer space? Is that where they?
No,
Is that what inspired Event Horizon?
no.
Um, The Conjuring,
Yep,
mm-hmm,
I
yep.
agree.
The
I think it's a hap.
Babadook.
I think it's a haphazard movie. Smashed two plots together in The Conjuring that
Well,
one,
it just
one of
it
them
went
was.
off the rails in the end, where she's
I agree.
chasing
I
somebody
agree.
in the floorboards. That's
Yeah,
all I remember
but we
now.
just joined into that, and it's halfway through. Like she's already chasing. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
sloppy
Can't.
movie. It's a sloppy movie.
Anyways,
Anyway,
The Babadook.
you don't like the Babadook?
I don't.
Okay,
Get Out.
I liked Get Out, but I
It
didn't like it as.
Follows. A lot of these are new ones,
I liked It Follows.
and I'm still on the fence on this, but The Shining.
The
I
original.
think that it works better as another atmospheric movie,
Uh huh.
and I think that the cult around it is well, what does this all mean?
Yeah.
And I think that it does a great job of setting the mood, but I don't care about any of the characters.
Andy, you and I. Oh my God, I can talk forever about that movie. I am not a fan of The Shining, and
I like it.
I wanted to
I
love
will
it.
watch it.
I've wanted to love it,
mhm.
but I agree. I hate all of those people in the movie. I don't like the only character I like in it is Scatman Crothers.
Yeah,
Is Dick Halloran. He's the only one,
Dick
and they
Halloran,
kill him.
yeah.
And in the book, he doesn't even die. But the fact I love that book. I love it. I love it. I love it. And they just massacred that book. That movie is nothing like The Shining. It is the same basic plot, but the characters
But
are ruined. Jack
it's just that
Nicholson is crazy from the fucking
I know.
first frame.
That's what I was going to say is that the characters don't
So
really go
weird.
through any change.
Nope.
Even the
No.
Wendy character,
Nope.
they're all something's off all the time, and I'm sure that was intended. But
Yeah. Everybody loves it because atmospherically, yeah,
why should I
atmospherically
Mm.
be
it's
so
great.
concerned when he's chasing her around the hotel, because he's already obviously off his rocker to
We
some
should do it.
extent, and so is she.
We should do another whole episode of like the trial of a movie, like the trial of The Shining, where we take sides as pros and cons and say, let's do that. Let's do it because I would love to just
This
eviscerate
is
that.
our this
See,
is our second podcast we're
That's our
starting. It's Films on Trial.
see,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not I'm
Films
not
on
the
trial.
hugest fan of it, but what got to me was just reading many years later about what Shelley Duvall went through making that movie.
But see
Yeah.
that to me doesn't make me like the
Pretty
movie
horrifying.
anymore. It actually makes me like it less because I don't like her performance in the movie because she's not Wendy Torrance in the movie, and
Well,
I don't like Nicholson. But I also don't agree with the director doing what he did to her. So the
Yeah.
fact that she went through all that shit doesn't make me like the movie anymore. It's like I didn't like the Suicide Squad movie, but when I hear about what asshat Joker, what's his name that played the Joker and it did,
Jared Leto, yeah.
yeah, Jared Leto, it makes me hate him and the movie even more
well,
because I'm like,
the other thing, and this will be the last thing, is that in The Shining, the parts that are seemingly supposed to be so shocking is
right.
she goes into the ballroom and there's skeletons.
And there's an elevator of blood, and there's a
and
bear
there's
blowing a
and
wolf,
blood comes out of an elevator.
and there's a bear blowing a wolf or whatever is happening in the
So
bedroom.
it just, and I think that the two twin girls, maybe they've just become so much of a trope now, but it's like,
Hmm.
come on, little creepy girls are in the same category as clowns to me. It's just like, is that the best you can think of?
Well, I gotta say that book is scary to me. That book terrified me when I read it. I loved the book, and so watching the movie, I was very let down. But I have to also say, I really love the Mick Garris TV version of The Shining. I think it's a stronger story, and yes, it's cheesy because it's made for ABC, and it couldn't do any of the really hard stuff. But it was written by King, and the teleplay was written by King. And I think it's so much stronger, and it has a human story. Steven Weber and
Steven
Rebecca De
Weber
Mornay.
is
Steven and
what
Rebecca De
makes
Mornay
that.
is Wendy.
I mean, yeah, okay,
Oh
Rebecca De
my
Mornay is
God.
amazing too.
Oh
That's true.
my
That's
God. The
true.
two of them in that
But
movie
Steven Weber is
kill it. Steven Weber just nails it. And the arc that he goes through and everything, it grabs you, it rips your heart out, and it also is very scary. The ending of that movie to me is way scarier than the ending of the Shining, the Kubrick Shining, to me.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of people can't get past the kid being all like, you know, yes, Tony, and all that stuff. But this bullshit in the movie, the yes, Tony, talking to his finger, and they don't even tell you what The Shining is in Kubrick's movie.
Yeah,
The
the thing
point of
is
the
that The
movie is not
Shining,
even
it's the
there.
title of the movie, and it doesn't really it doesn't really affect that much of
No,
anything.
it doesn't. Anyway, guys, I'm
Nope.
sorry. I gotta go. I gotta get
Yep.
in this. We will do a trial of The Shining or something on another podcast. But thanks everybody for being here. It was awesome talking to you, Alex, Heath, and Andy. Always a pleasure. I think. I hope that our listeners enjoy the conversation and don't turn it off in the middle of the
Well,
first
there'll probably be
5
some heavy
minutes.
editing.
Not that much. I don't have that much time. I've got to edit the other episodes. I'm only gonna
Okay.
take out bathroom breaks. Really,
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
keep most
Shoot.
of it. So
Okay.
yeah, so we'll but it was a good conversation. I always love talking to you guys, especially about horror.
Yes,
So
thank you all.
love you
Yeah.
guys, and
And thank you all for
we'll
the
talk.
for the lists too.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
a huge
Oh, yeah.
fan.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I think
Thank
I've
you.
seen everything that everybody put on here. But I just sit around and watch
There's a
horror
bunch I
movies.
haven't seen, which is exciting. So
Yeah, but send me your list because there might be some things that I did not see yet, so would like to check it out. But thanks everybody again. Send me those lists, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
You've been listening to Grave Tales, a special chat with the creators of the Frightmare Theater podcast. Thanks so much for supporting the show on Patreon. Catch us next month for an all-new episode of Graveside Chat.